Mr. President, thank you. Mr. President. Mr. President, if you believe we should be able to detain and deport undocumented immigrants who have committed serious crimes, and you took Republicans at their word that the Laken Riley Act was necessary for us to do that, you need to know that is already federal law. We can and do already detain and deport immigrants who commit serious crimes, and we are not about to change that. But Republicans have been ignoring the policies we already have on the books to push for a bill that, in its current form, is more extreme, expensive, and broad than it first appears. I am very concerned that without serious amendments, this bill is rife with unintended consequences and powers that could be abused. As written, it will drastically undermine civil liberties in this country. It will throw our immigration system into absolute chaos by undermining any president's authority to shape federal policy. It will cost tens of billions of dollars, and here is the kicker, it will end up punishing legal immigrants and diverting resources from detaining true threats to public safety. First off, let's talk about how extremely broad the language of this bill is. Under this bill, you don't have to be found guilty of a felony to be detained and deported. That is a huge attack on due process. All you need is to be arrested or charged, regardless of whether that is something as small as shoplifting a candy bar, regardless of whether it may become clear that you are innocent, regardless of whether this happened years or even decades ago, and even regardless of whether you are a child. So let me just underscore that because it's important. This bill has no exemption for kids, no cutoff age, no process to keep it in line with our general child welfare laws. As written, this bill appears so broad that a child could be locked up and put on a plane without their parents. With such sweeping language, I am deeply concerned the Trump administration could abuse this law to deport dreamers or our farm workers or other essential workers who, again, may never be convicted of a crime. And to be fair, it's not just Trump I'm worried about, because this bill is an open invitation for Republican state officials to dictate individual case outcomes regardless of ICE, derail national immigration policy, and even disrupt international relations. Under this bill as written, any state attorney general could wreck major humanitarian relief pathways, like temporary protected status for Venezuelan or Ukrainian nationals. They can seek court orders to deport individuals without sign-off from ICE. And in some cases, they could sue to halt visas from entire countries. That is a policy that, by its design, will end up punishing the people who are following the law to enter the U.S. legally. It could punish refugees who are fleeing violence. It could punish people who come here to engage in trade and commerce that helps our economy grow. It could even punish American citizens if they're hoping to get a visa for their spouse. With a federal immigration system that is already too chaotic and complicated, just wait till any state AG can overrule ICE, undermine the president, and throw thousands of legal visa applications into limbo. The bill also promises these lawsuits priority, which could be a huge burden on our courts. And if that weren't counterproductive enough, not only will this bill as written punish legal immigrants, it will also divert resources we need to detain genuine threats to our public safety. If ICE is required, as this bill says, to spend resources detaining nonviolent, not even convicted shoplifting cases and the like, they will have their hands tied as resources are stretched thinner and thinner by an overwhelming number of minor cases, leaving them with fewer and fewer resources then to tackle the most serious cases. And that is especially concerning because DHS already does not have anywhere near the resources to implement this bill. ICE would need actually more than 3 times the current number of detention beds, a 265% increase for this bill. It would need to execute 80 removal flights a week, almost double its current capacity. Not to mention it would need to double ground transportation. That all adds up to ICE needing to nearly double its staff, hiring over 18,000 additional people. And to give you a sense of how unrealistic that is, historically, DHS hasn't been able to onboard more than 1,000 people a year. And to give you a sense of how expensive this is, ICE estimates it will need more than triple its budget in year 1, really closer to 4 times their current funding level. We are now talking up to $83 billion for this legislation over the first 3 years to implement it. That's more than the annual budget for the entire Department of Homeland Security. That is a lot of money to spend on a bill that is going to cause chaos, punish legal immigrants, and undermine due process in America, all while drawing resources away from true threats. Mr. President, make no mistake. There are serious challenges we have at our border. There is a serious need for sensible immigration reform. But being tough on immigration does not require us to forsake our bedrock principles like due process or our moral obligation to keep children safe. It does not require us to ignore our common sense and waste crucial resources. And so while I hope to work with my colleagues to improve this bill, as I try to improve every bill that I can, I have to say we have a long road ahead to address my deep concerns with the way this bill threatens due process and the potential for it to be abused. So I strongly urge my colleagues to demand a far more serious amendment process on this bill. But more than that, I urge them to demand a serious, bipartisan approach to tackling immigration in an effective, humane way, one that protects our country and upholds our values.